Alright, this is John Cullen with OKRaw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, coming at you from beautiful backyard garden here. And in this episode, I want to share with you guys some of my experiences on living on a raw vegan diet, which I would say for 30 years, although I know there are some people out there that are raw vegans that say, John, you're not raw vegan. Basically, I'll explain to you guys what's up. So 25 years of me being raw vegan, I was like 99.9% raw vegan. Never ate anything knowingly heat processed. I mean, I bought like raw nuts and seeds and, you know, dehydrated herbs and spices and did the best I could, but nothing knowingly heat processed. You know, about 25 years in, I got some microbiome testing, other blood testing, and then I decided that, hey, I think for me personally, it'd be a good idea to start including some heat processed foods for better health. So that's what I did. That being said, at that point, I still ate the overall majority of my diet, fruits and vegetables and raw foods, minimally processed. You know, anywhere from 10 to 20% heat processed food is what I eat, and I've pretty much been consistent with that to this day. My goal is to eat as much raw foods as possible in the forms of fresh fruits, fresh vegetables from my garden, salads, fresh juices, fresh smoothies. And I've seen so many things happen over all these years. You know, I want to share some of the knowledge and wisdom with you guys because there's a lot of newbies online teaching about raw vegan and how to do it when, you know, they may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in and they don't have the experience to have known what has happened to themselves or others in the long term. And that's, you know, if you're into this diet, hopefully you are doing it for the long term. It's just not some fad diet. And my personal opinion is that the more you follow, you know, influencers that have not been doing it as long, who may fall off, and many of the influencers that have been doing raw foods for not so long have actually fallen off the wagon, you know, the more likely, in my opinion, you are to fall off the wagon and then basically to give it all up and go back to junk food, processed food, or eating animal foods in excess, which science proves is definitely not healthy. So in this episode, I'm going to share with you guys 10 of my most essential tips that I've learned that I want you guys to incorporate in your life. I guess the first thing I want to say in preface before I even get into my tips is that I want you to know that health is a journey, not a destination. That's very important. You know, I was like raw vegan, I was like really healthy, and, you know, do some testing to find out that, hey, I'm not as healthy as I thought I was. And this happens to many people on a raw vegan diet. When they see that they're not as healthy as they thought they were going to be, then they just totally bail and give it all up instead of making small, minor course corrections to improve their diet, to make it better so that they no longer have the challenges. And once again, that was one of the reasons why I started incorporating small amounts of heat processed foods to better diversify my diet, my microbiome, and help with some blood sugar regulation that I appeared to have based on some blood testing. So now I'm going to share with you guys my 10 tips. My first tip is I want you to prioritize whole, fresh, organic foods. You know, prioritize especially the fruits and the vegetables, especially the vegetables and leafy green vegetables are the most under-eaten foods, especially for many raw vegans that tend to focus on the fruit and they fail to eat enough vegetables, in my opinion, to help balance out all the fruit. Vegetables are essential, in my opinion, to be successful on a raw vegan diet. My goal is to get like 2 pounds of veggies, leafy green veggies, a day, 2 pounds of veggies a day, which I easily accomplish usually in my morning green juice because I'm drinking like 30 ounces of green juice that are basically mostly leaves that have been juiced. So besides eating the leafy greens, I also encourage you guys to eat microgreens, sprouts, as well as nutrient-dense fruits, as well as other fruits. These are very critical, very important for our health, and these categories of foods, unfortunately, are also most under-eaten. I think in some instances in raw food diet, they may be overstressed, so you eat those foods to the exclusion of everything else, which I think can be dangerous and not quite as healthy in many cases. I think also that it's very important to prioritize fresh food. I mean, I'm sitting here in my garden. I grow almost all my greens that I need in the wintertime, as well as a lot of greens in the summertime where I live. And I want you guys to focus on growing it yourself. When you grow it yourself, you can add minerals and beneficial bacteria and microbes into the soil that they're not adding in conventional agriculture or even organic agriculture to ensure you have higher quality food. Plus all these superfood here. You know, I could come over here and I could literally pick this Mizuno lettuce, eat it fresh. No third party ever touched it. It has the highest in vibrancy and life force than any food you're even going to buy at the supermarket or even a farmer's market. That being said, if you guys don't grow and don't have space to grow outside, grow microgreens and sprouts indoors. I've been enjoying this last week microgreens and sprouts myself from local farms. I also encourage you guys to avoid buying packaged raw foods. You know, they seem to be drying up these days. There used to be all kinds of different companies making all these packaged raw foods, and now there's only a handful of them because I guess they don't sell that well. So packaged foods like packaged raw crackers and kale chips, and a lot of these companies have shied away from putting the word raw, but they'll put like low heat or low temperature dehydrated, but they don't disclaim the temperature. So it is likely to be hotter than 118, which is what a raw foodist would like. Number two, I would say I don't want you guys to forget about juicing, vacuum blending, and even high quality freeze-dried superfood powders such as wild blueberries, right, for nutrition. These are staples in my diet, especially the juicing. I drink a juice every single day. This allows me to power in more leafy green vegetables than I would otherwise be able to eat to stay better hydrated and get more of the protein, vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals from these greens. I know some people on a raw vegan diet don't even recommend juicing, which I think is terrible. Juicing can be part of a healthy raw vegan diet. I wouldn't say it's necessarily necessary, but I find it to be very critical. Like if I don't drink my juice, I find that I actually tend to eat a lot more because I'm not getting all my nutrient needs met. This is especially important if you're eating, you know, just industrial grown food that in my opinion is degraded and does not have the mineral content that, you know, homegrown food can provide. Of course, besides juicing my greens, I also like to make smoothies. I mostly make actually fruit-based smoothies. So I'm basically blending up things like mango and frozen berries, a whole different kinds of them, and adding different, maybe some powders into my smoothies to get them in me. I'll also make green smoothies. Also too, when I'm really lazy, I'll actually vacuum blend my salad into a blended salad. I do encourage you guys to use a vacuum blender instead of a traditional blender that adds significant amounts of air and oxygen into your blended mixtures, which will reduce the oxygen sensitive nutrients as well as force you to swallow more air, which may mean bloating, gas, and belching, plus reduced nutrition in the food and decreased flavor sensations because you're oxidizing some of the valuable phytonutrients, which actually are the flavoring. And then finally, I want to recommend that you guys look towards some powdered dried foods, whether they're freeze-dried berries. They are available at Trader Joe's for a pretty good price, or you buy a freeze dryer, link down below to my video on the best freeze dryer you can buy. I freeze dry wild blueberries and sprinkle them in my oatmeal almost on a daily basis these days to amp up my anthocyanin content. I also use other powders such as maca powder because you can't buy fresh maca, things like carob powder, also baobab powder, mesquite powder, also algae powder such as chlorella, spirulina, even things like wheatgrass powder. You know, I'm not going to shy away from these powders. They make up a very small portion of my diet, but the portion that they make up, they add significant amounts of phytonutrients. They're definitely not adding a lot of calories, but they're adding a lot of phytonutrient content, and that's one of my other secrets of my raw vegan diet is you want to max out the phytonutrient content of the foods you're eating. You know, if you're eating a diet of romaine lettuce, bananas, and dates, you know, you're eating a very low phytonutrient diet despite being all raw vegan. And, you know, in my opinion, and based on what I've seen, your long-term health outcome is not going to be as good as somebody who is eating, you know, red lettuce. You know, I'm growing basically mostly red lettuce in my garden because you could buy green lettuce easily, but red lettuce is a bit more hard to come by. You know, you want to eat these highly pigmented foods that have high levels of these phytonutrients, polyphenols, and flavonoids, and antioxidants, because that's going to keep you in better shape and healthier for longer. While I do encourage juicing of leafy greens and vegetables, I actually discourage the juicing of fruits. I know that many raw vegans may be blasting all this OJ, orange juice, watermelon juice, and all these other things. I no longer recommend that. If you want to have some juice, fruit juice occasionally, I think that's all right. If you do juice fruits, I do recommend at least cutting it with at least minimum 50% vegetables, better yet 80% vegetables. I think optimally we should be eating our fruits whole, or at least minimally blending them whole, so at least you get the fiber. You know, in juicing and in blending, even if you're vacuum blending, you are disturbing the fiber, and when you disturb the fiber of fruits and vegetables, you know, the sugar will absorb differently than if they are in their whole food form and you chew them up, which is, I think, the best way to eat your fruits personally. My third essential tip is I want you to diversify your diet. Whether you're just gonna eat raw fruits and vegetables, or whether you're gonna start including some heat processed foods like I do these days, it's essential to diversify your diet. If you go to the grocery store every week and once again you buy bananas, dates, and romaine lettuce and you eat that day after day, year after year, number one, that's very boring. I would get tired of it. You know, number two, you're gonna have a very limited amount and limited spectrum of minerals, vitamins, phytonutrients, and more importantly, fiber and resistant starch, which are essential for our microbiome. Right? That's why I encourage you guys to eat all different kinds and embrace all different kinds of fruits, leafy greens, and vegetables, right? Luckily here in town I have different ethnic markets, such as international markets, Asian markets, Hispanic markets, that have a wide selection of different fruits and vegetables, from dragon fruit to chico sapotes to mamey sapotes to cherries this time of year. All different kinds of fruits are available depending on where I shop at. So I encourage you guys to locate, ethnic supermarkets in your area, even do mail order online to diversify the kinds of fruits you could eat, but not just fruits. I want you guys to diversify your vegetables. Once again, if I go one of those Asian markets, they have all kinds of vegetables, bitter melon, all kinds of different herbs that, Americans may not be familiar with. Celtuce, which is basically lettuce that is bought for the stem itself. Think like celery instead of eating the leafy greens of lettuce. All these have different kinds of fibers that are essential, and I want you guys to, focus on getting 40 different kinds of plant foods a week, right? And Asian markets and ethnic markets can really help you guys do that with your fruits and vegetables. And beyond just fruits and vegetables, while fruits and vegetables are most essential, I also encourage you guys, whether you want to stay raw or not, to diversify to other food groups, right? You could eat sprouted grains and sprouted legumes. Some legumes can be sprouted, such as lentils and adzuki and mung beans, right? You could sprout and eat those if you want to keep your raw food label. These days, I still keep my raw food label because my definition of being a raw vegan is if I eat 75% or more of my fruit in a raw, natural, minimally processed state. I also encourage you guys to eat mushrooms. I actually just yesterday I bought lion's mane. I bought over a pound of lion's mane mushroom. The week before that, I bought some maitake, and then the week before that, I actually bought shiitake mushrooms. These foods are actually very low in calories, but very high in nutrients such as ergothioneine, which can be helpful for anti-cancer, also anti-aging, and also helpful for detoxification. And most raw vegans may leave them out. For the majority of my raw food career, I actually left out mushrooms, but I now see the error of my ways and that I want to be more inclusive instead of exclusive, right? In addition, I also want you guys to consider, heat processing different kinds of grains and beans. When I do heat processed grains, I generally eat, low gluten grains, although I am not a stickler about gluten. I don't try to eat just standard wheat. I eat like an ancient wheat called einkorn that's actually grown in Europe, that's organic. But yeah, so I encourage you guys, once again, to diversify your diet. Also, you could do dietary diversity by including more herbs and spices, right? Herbs and spices are different foods. They contain different phytonutrients. I encourage you guys to eat them fresh whenever possible. But of course, I incorporate lots of dried spices into my diet. Almost on a daily basis, I always sprinkle dried onions and garlic, and also dried salcornia, which is basically called green salt, which provides me essential minerals, right? Also add things like seaweeds, whether they're dried or whether I get it frozen and then defrosted and eat it, or freeze-dried. I love my seaweeds for the trace minerals they provide, especially things like iodine that can be deficient on vegan diets. And let's not forget, one of the main reasons for diversifying your diet is not just the vitamins, minerals, the phytochemicals, but also it's the different kinds of fiber and resistant starch that may be in other kinds of foods besides just fruits and vegetables to feed your microbiome. Fourth tip is I want you guys to be open to making adjustments, right? That's very important. You know, you might get in your mind that this is the ideal way to eat, and then you're eating this specific way or these specific foods, and then it's not agreeing with you, right? Or you get blood tests back and your blood tests are not where you would like them to be, such as what happened to me, right? So I want you guys to always be flexible in your approach and be willing to change. You know, some of the things I recommend are, number one, keep a food diary or food journal. Write down what you're eating, and then after the meal, write down how you felt, right? And do that for a week, 2 weeks, a month. And then at the end of that time, look it over and see, oh, every time I ate bananas, I seem to get a bit bloated. Then maybe your body is telling you through your documentation, not just what you think, that, you know, as much as most raw vegans eat tons of bananas and they're supposed to be good for you, for some reason, your body is not able to handle the quantity of bananas you're eating. So then you need to adjust and try a different kind of fruit. Maybe eat a little bit less fruit. Maybe eat that fruit along with some leafy green vegetables or with some celery, or maybe blend it up in a smoothie with some other foods, including some nuts and seeds, or, you know, some leafy greens or whatever, to see, you know, how you react differently. You know, this is something I think we've lost. We just basically mindlessly eat because somebody told us you need to eat 30 bananas a day because that's best for everybody. And in my opinion, that's BS, right? We all are a little bit different. We have different genes which affect what we could digest to some small effects. More importantly, we have different digestive systems based on what we were raised on. If we were breastfed, we have different microbiomes, which will basically help us digest certain foods better than others. And so we're all very different. So, you know, I'm not as big on a one-size-fits-all model. I'm for pragmatically figuring out what is the best diet for you in your particular situation. Of course, also, other things that you should do so that you can modify your diet to tailor it to you and your specific needs is to get regular blood testing. Link down below my video on how you could get blood testing in the US for as low as $5 plus a draw fee, or how to get microbiome testing. These are essential tests that I use to ensure that I'm not going to be deficient on my diet and that I could make adjustments based on my testing if I so deem fit. Hey, if you think microbiome tests are BS, then get one and see what it says. And if you think your raw vegan diet is perfect and now your microbiome tests come back perfect, great, keep up what you're doing. I have a few friends that have gotten their microbiome tests. It's just about perfect. They dial it in even better and even get it better than that. That being said, most friends I have that are raw vegan that have gotten their microbiome test, you know, they're not as good as I would like them to be, and mine was definitely not where I would like it to be, because your microbiome is related to your overall health, not just now, but also more importantly in the future and in future years, and your long-term health outcome, all right? So always be flexible in your approach and get and take measurements so you can adjust and change as needed instead of being so rigid. Number 5, this is a big problem I had when I first started being raw vegan, as well as a lot of friends and people I've seen over the years, right? I don't want you guys to overload on your nuts and seeds and your fats, or also your dried fruit, right? Especially when you're new into it, you kind of just want something that's rich and fulfilling because you're used to eating really dense food, and fruits and vegetables, they have a low caloric density per their weight. And, you know, nuts, seeds, and especially dried fruits have high caloric density. So we really don't want to overeat those. These days, I eat dried fruit very sparingly. I have found that they are not the best for me. I'd rather eat fresh, whole fruit than dried fruit, although in a pinch, I will eat some dried fruit. That being said, on the nuts and seeds, you know, I've also seen people open bags of nuts and seeds and you just drive around in the car with me and just basically chow down on the whole package, like a pound of nuts and seeds, like in front of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's blowing my mind. Nuts and seeds are not inherently bad for you, but the challenge is the more nuts and seeds you eat, that means the less of other foods that are healthier than nuts and seeds you will be eating, right? So my goal on an everyday basis is to eat about 2 ounces of nuts and seeds in a day, right? The studies show that 2 ounces is a pretty solid amount. You don't want to eat too little or not enough nuts and seeds and have your fat go too low. Of course, you know, depending on your specific needs and your specific situation, you may need to be on a low-fat diet, especially if you're having some issues with your heart and whatnot, so consult your doctor. But I'm just saying, for general people, my belief is that you should eat about 2 ounces of nuts and seeds maybe a little bit more, maybe a bit less. And then also, more importantly, rotate the nuts and seeds. Don't ever only eat walnuts. Don't ever only eat Brazil nuts. Don't only ever eat pistachios or cashews or macadamia nuts. You know, I rotate my nuts. One day I'll eat mac nuts. One day I'll eat walnuts. One day I'll eat pecans. One day I'll eat, you know, pistachios. One day I'll eat cashews. One day, instead of any nut, actually I'll eat avocados for my fat. Or some days on rare days, I'll have coconut, you know, for my fat, like young coconut meat. I also will eat a high quality olive oil. You know, on some rare days, I will also eat olives as well, you know, more often. So I really want you guys to rotate the kinds of fats. And then the last tip on fats is I want you guys always to focus on getting some flax seeds in, like 1 tablespoon a day. Flax seeds have the highest ratio of omega-3s to 6s. Most other nuts and seeds have significantly higher omega-6s than 3s. And if you don't have enough omega-3s, then your omega-3 testing is going to be not good, and which is really bad for long-term health outcomes. In addition, your DHA and EPA may also be low if you're not converting, if you don't have the right ratios of omega-3 to 6. My 6th tip is I want you guys to strive to get all your nutrients from whole plant foods if possible. And if that is not possible for you, then don't be scared to supplement. You know, recently I just had an episode about a 20-year raw vegan who was 100% vegan, 90% raw, and he was deficient in B12 because he did not supplement. And he started having some neurological problems because of it. And some of these problems are non-reversible if it gets more advanced. And I don't want that to happen to you. You know, if you really don't want to supplement, then I would say at least get tested. And if your test comes back that you're not in good position, then I would say supplement immediately. That being said, you know, these days I just take B12 for insurance. I played the non-supplement game for many years and always found that I was on the low end range of my B12, although sometimes I was like just in the normal range, sometimes just out of normal. And then also, but my homocysteine and methylmalonic acid in some cases would be high, which is the functional indicators of B12. And so for these days I just supplement, as well as I also supplement vitamin D, especially in the wintertime, when I'm not getting enough sun. And there are other nutrients of concern on a raw vegan diet, especially if you're not eating enough in nuts and seeds, or you eliminated them completely, and or you're not eating your own homegrown food and not eating, you know, things like seaweed that may have other trace minerals. You may be deficient in zinc, as well as some other trace minerals. So you may want to look into supplementation. I have a video down below where I talk about a supplement called Complement, which was actually made for vegans and has all the nutrients that a vegan diet may be deficient in. I also would recommend a DHA and EPA supplement, and luckily the other day I was actually at Costco and saw they had a high quality DHA and EPA supplement for actually about half price compared to other places. It was actually quite fresh. It actually even came in an aluminum bottle that I bought, so I've been taking 2 of those a day for my future brain health. Of course, my final tip is I want you guys to get regular blood tests to see if you're deficient in any of these nutrients, so that could guide you whether you need to supplement or maybe even in some cases stop supplementing. My 7th tip is I want you guys to always stay hydrated. Hydration is very important, and just by being dehydrated could cause many health situations to crop up in your body. And you know, when I say hydrated, I don't just mean drink tons of water. Yes, while water is essential and should play a role in your hydration status, like every morning and evening before I go to bed, I drink a little bit of water before, and then also when I get up in the morning, that's my main dose of water. But besides from that, I drink fresh vegetable juices for hydration, eat fresh fruits for hydration, but we should not rely on, like, you know, eating fruits alone for your hydration. You know, I believe vegetable juices, maybe some kind of like teas, herbal teas, if you want to drink some teas, they could be helpful for hydration as well. The kind of water that I recommend for most people out there is either reverse osmosis or distilled water that basically have all the impurities removed. To me, water is as important as the food you're eating. Hopefully you're choosing organic food, you know, that's non-contaminated, and that's why we want to have, you know, pure water that's either distilled or reverse osmosis that removes all the minerals as well as all the other contaminants. In my opinion these days, you know, drinking like a spring water, that could have heavy metal contamination, especially like so many things are polluted in the earth these days, as well as even just the hardness of the water. Some of the minerals in the water may be high in calcium, may cause calcification, And the other thing is that the minerals in the water were really not apt to digest anyways. So I mean, where I live, we have hard water. So I'd rather feed my hard water to my garden, to my plants, let them absorb the water, filter the water for me, bring up the minerals, put them in a form I could digest, and I harvest my greens and leaves from my garden and then juice them and then drink that to get my hydration as well as my minerals in an absorbable form. I'm against also adding sea salt to your water because once again, sea salt does not have the minerals in the right, with the right charge that we need to get them absorbed. My 8th tip, and you probably would have found me saying this maybe even just 5-10 years ago, is I'm going to tell you guys straight up that heat processed foods shouldn't be seen as the devil, and they're not all that bad. If you need to eat some heat processed foods to stay on your mostly raw vegan diet, I think that's great at this point. And a matter of fact, for some raw vegans, it may even make their diet even healthier because once again, when you're heat processing food, you can now condense foods and eat more of them. So for example, you could eat a salad this big, but I could eat double the amount of greens if I heat process them because they kind of condense down, breaks down the cell walls, makes them easier to digest. And even then, I get a higher absorption of certain phytonutrients out of the heat processed vegetables. Link down below to that video where I discuss this and pull up published scientific studies. Another thing I would say is that raw food purity is not the goal. Actually, that should be the enemy. Raw food purity has caused, in my opinion, some people to lose their lives on the raw vegan diet because they need to keep detoxing because you still have health problems. The problem is, not your diet, but it's that you're toxic and you need to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until you detox to death. Yes, it has happened. My personal opinion is that our bodies detox on an everyday basis, and when something's not going right, it's because you're being too rigid in your approach, and my opinion, you should be more flexible and, even include some minimally heat processed foods. Now, when I say heat processed foods, I don't mean cooked foods. I don't mean go down to McDonald's or your local vegan restaurant. No, no, no. The only way I recommend heat processing your food is through steaming, boiling, or an Instant Pot. I personally use an Instant Pot because I'm a single guy, and I put the food in there, put it on 10 minutes, and walk away, and I come back, and it's done, heat processed perfectly, not burnt, in a moist environment below 248 degrees, so I don't create things like acrylamide and 2-MCPD and all these other toxins that can be created in high temperature cooking in dry heat, right? That's very essential, very important to use the right heat processing method that is not toxic, as some raw vegans would lead you to believe that all cooked food is all the same toxicity. It's completely not based on my research, and I have plenty of published studies that I share in my videos to prove this. And here's the thing, guys, I don't want you guys to forget that a mostly raw food or raw vegan diet is incredibly beneficial, right? And even though I step back from being 99.9% raw, I still feel I get all the benefits and even more benefits these days for me personally, including some heat processed foods because I'm expanding my repertoire of what I'm eating. It's also kind of making eating more fun because I'm not just limited to fruits and vegetables, some nuts and seeds. I'm eating different kinds of grains and beans and purple rice, and I ate black beans last night with guacamole, with microgreens on Alyssa's raw wrap with some, double concentrated tomato paste, so it's like a half and half raw, and cucumbers, right? So it's like half raw, half not raw. And it tasted amazing. It was like eating a burrito, but it's like half raw because only I think the beans were heat processed and my tomato white paste was processed, but everything else in there was raw. So yeah, you don't have to deprive yourself to be all raw to think you got to be all raw to be 100% healthy. There's quite many ways to do heat processed foods to do it healthy. Unfortunately, most of the people, especially vegans, won't teach you these specific techniques to keep your heat processed foods as healthy as possible. So now I want to mention the heat processed vegetables that I would recommend to eat. So I always recommend heat processing leafy greens and vegetables. If you go buy broccoli or cauliflower from the store, it's like hard for me to eat those raw because I grow cauliflower and broccoli that I pick and eat fresh. It's so tender, so delicious. The stuff from the store is like all old and just, not water rich and just kind of gross. But if you cook it, you could eat a lot more of it. Likewise, with my leafy greens, this bed has a lot of mustard greens that I might eat a few leaves raw in a salad, but for the most part, I'll harvest them, and then I could cook so many mustard greens and then eat those heat processed and get a lot more of them in me. Of course, also, this now opens up to eating other foods such as purple rice. Jaspberry rice is usually what I like to cook, as well as all different kinds of beans, from navy beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, different kinds of lentils, black beans, also things like fava beans, and there's so many different kinds of peas you could also heat process as well. And beans are a staple food in many of the different blue zones around the world. And you know, the studies show that beans are a very healthy food. Link down below to my bean video and how I will heat prepare my beans as well as buy them pre-prepared sometimes to expand my diet. I believe they're one of the healthiest foods on earth, and I should have been eating them for a much longer period of time. And of course, another food I like to heat process are my mushrooms. Mushrooms should be heat processed. A few of them may be able to be eaten raw, but they could have some negative side effects if you do eat them raw. That's why I like to heat process my mushrooms. Once again, a very low calorie food, but with ergothioneine and other essential nutrients, including some B vitamins that can be very beneficial for us. All right, my 9th tip, this is a very important one, guys. I don't want you guys to be dogmatic. There's a lot of dogmatic teachings, in my personal opinion, out there in the raw foods movement. And you know, the one thing at least I try to share on my channel is I don't want you guys to be locked in and be dogmatic. There's a lot of dogmatic principles of the raw vegan diet that I learned when I was young, and I repeated for so many years until actually I looked up the science or I had different experiences. You know, one of them is that if you eat any cooked foods, it's going to cause leukocytosis. I found that not to be true. It's only when you heat process animal foods or even just eat animal foods, because of the foreign proteins, that causes leukocytosis, which is basically an increase in the white blood cell count, all right? Of course, another dogmatic thing is that 100% raw food diet works for everybody. You know, it may not work for everybody, it can work for some people, I will say. Another dogmatic thing that I really want to dispel is that a high fruit diet works for all raw vegans and is our optimal diet. I personally would disagree with that. I have met several people that don't do a high fruit raw vegan diet, still do raw vegan, that it doesn't work for. Their blood sugar gets really perturbed. You know, when I was younger, it worked for me, and then nowadays I eat a little bit less fruit than I used to. The other thing that I want to say is that, you know, mono meals may not be the ideal meal to eat, and I know that is something that is propagated by many people. It sounds ideal, it sounds easy, and people like things easy. That being said, it really restricts what you're eating. So you're not eating as much nutrition. That's why I say diversify your diet, as well as it may give you an overload of sugars depending on what you're eating and depending on your specific body and requirements, all right? Another thing I would say is that we want to also not go this all or nothing route. You know, I know a lot of people may recommend 40-day juice fasts or these long juice fasts to clean out and detox, you know, and all this stuff, and then go raw vegan. And you know, my personal belief is that it's better to do a much slower transition to raw vegan, because it's going to stick and your body has time to adjust instead of going into this 40-day juice fast that can go haywire. And when you do a 40-day juice fast, link down below to my video on why you shouldn't do a 40-day juice fast, and what they won't tell you is that you could really mess up your digestive system, because now your digestive system for 40 days gets used to digesting nothing but juices that contains zero insoluble fiber and may have low soluble fiber, especially if you're juicing a lot of fruits, and can make your digestive system, when you go back to eating whole foods, right, fruits and vegetables and other healthy foods, give you a lot of problems. I've heard this from many people that have gone on juice fasts, that after they get off a juice fast, they can't handle real food anymore. Then they're told by the people that are instructing them, oh, you need to go further. You need to drink more juice because you're not healed enough. And like that to me is just wrong. The other thing I want to say is that health is a long-term journey. It's not a destination, so you don't have to, you know, eat the ideal diet tomorrow. Of course, if you have a chronic health situation that you're trying to heal, I definitely would encourage go faster instead of slower. You know, you definitely want to get rid of all the bad things, the toxic things, the highly processed foods, and the foods that are not healthy for you. But, you know, once again, health is a journey, and every day we wake up, we have the opportunity to change. All right, my 10th and final tip is that raw vegan is not an end to health, right? Health is more than just raw vegan, right? Sorry to say that. It's going to wake you guys up, especially when I was younger and a raw vegan. I thought, as long as I'm raw vegan, I'm going to be super healthy. I can stay up late. I don't need that much sleep. all these things I thought that were completely wrong, and I'm here to tell you guys, based on my experiences and the science that is now emerging, that was not available then when I got into it, is that, your lifestyle is critical for your health. Yes, diet is one component for sure, but even a bigger component of your health, and I would call it a pillar to health, not just a pillar, like diet is a pillar of health. The little foundation of your health is your sleep, right? You don't need to do anything to change your sleep. You need to work on getting to bed earlier. These days, my goal is to kind of get to bed by 10 o'clock, which is insane to me, because before I'm like, if you go to bed at 10, you're wasting time, because I've always stayed up till like midnight or even 1 when I was younger, right? I could get more work done. Well, and I was shorting myself some sleep, and, come to learn that definitely when you're sleeping, especially between 10 and 1 in the morning or something like that, that's when we get some of the most restorative sleep, so it's better to go to bed early. And then these days I've been waking up early as well, sometimes as early as 6 a.m. So I'm, getting a good solid 8 hours in, and I would recommend at least getting 7 to 8 hours in, right? Maybe 6, but really I'm more with the 7 or 8 these days. And to get better sleep, it's very important to stop eating a few hours, 2 to 3 hours minimally before you go to bed. Another thing that I'm very into is sleeping in a very pitch black, dark room. Of course, another thing I'm into is limiting your blue light exposure after the sun goes down. So I have actually red lights and amber lights that don't put out any red light spectrum. I also have glasses that will block that out. My laptop and my phone go into like a night mode where I don't get the blue rays. So these are very important things to increase your sleep quality. Next one, of course, is exercise. Whether you guys want to go out for walks, runs, bikes, play tennis, pickleball, gardening, you need to get exercise every single day. It's especially good to exercise after your meals, especially if you're eating a fruit meal. If you can't exercise after your meal, maybe even before your meal, to create a demand for the food you're going to be eating. This is very critical for your health. And you don't need to run marathons or anything, but you do need to get regular exercise. I know some of you guys might not be able to walk around the block, so do what you can. Take 5 steps, and you get tired, come back and sit down and rest, and then do another 5 steps and 10 steps, and keep building on where you're at, and soon you'll be able to go on nice long walks. I mean, actually, I prefer hiking at the local national park. All right, the final thing I want to say is that I want you guys also to manage your stress levels. This is also something that I've had to work on over the years. Number one is you got to be more resilient, right? Don't let things stress you out. If your partner or your friends do something that make you upset, think about, hey, if I get upset, is it going to hurt them more or me more? Is it going to hurt our relationship? In many cases, you're getting upset, it's just going to hurt you more because it's stressing you out. It causes a reaction in your body to occur, right? So you need to just, I've become a lot more mellow the more mature I get, because I'm things just don't bother me. But it's like, how important is this that the dishes didn't get washed, really, in the scope of things? Yes, I'm not happy about it. I'm not going to yell. I'll be calm, cool, and collected. Maybe I'll do it myself, and I will explain how I feel. But it's not worth yelling or getting mad at somebody, because that's just going to stress me out and then actually make my health worse. Also, it's going to probably upset the other person, and they might get in a shouting match, and then that's just going to create more stress upon you. So it just doesn't really work, in my opinion. Of course, also, you could do things like meditation, mindfulness, breathing, get out to nature, do nature walks, forest bathing. All these things are very important to combat some stress. Go in the ocean, get some negative ions. You need to have an outlet. Maybe do yoga. You need to have an outlet for the stress and to de-stress and just relax. Go grounding, walk with your feet, your bare feet on grass to ground. I find this very relaxing. Most days I'm actually out in my garden working with my hands, working with nature. I find this very relaxing, and it helps me de-stress as well. I really hope that this episode, guys, helped you out with some of my most important tips that I've learned over the last 30 years being on a raw vegan diet. I mean, the main thing I really want to sum up today is that, life and diet is not about all or nothing. I either got to run marathons and eat all raw, or I'm crap. No, life is a journey. It's a journey, not a destination, right? Do what you can each and every day. Eat as much raw food as you can. Eat as much healthy, heat processed foods as you can. do the best you can and go in a slow and gradual pace, and slowly but surely you will win the race like the tortoise and the hare, right? Don't try to bite off more than you could chew, and you'll be successful in the long run. Yes, it might take you longer to get there, but the fact of the matter is you actually will end up getting there. When things don't go right, make small adjustments, small improvements, so that you don't just bail and go carnivore, right? If things aren't working perfectly, doesn't mean the raw vegan diet's bad, just means maybe the way you've implemented it is not optimal, so maybe you need some more heat processed foods, maybe you need some more diversity, maybe you need to start sleeping more, maybe you need to start eating, a few hours before you go to bed, maybe you need to start boning up on some green juices. There's so many different tweaks you guys can do before you just bail, which usually happens on YouTube, which I think is quite sad. But if you're sane and rational and go by the inch it's a cinch, by the yard it's hard, you can succeed, and I'm here to support you so that you guys could do that. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, please be sure to give this a big thumbs up. More importantly, share this with other people you feel could help, because these are some wise words of wisdom from somebody that has been around the block and doing this quite a long time. And I have a little bit different perspective than some other friends and colleagues that have been doing this diet for 30 plus years, which is fine. We all have our own techniques that have worked for us, and I encourage you guys to look at other people that have been doing this for a long period of time, see what they have to say, and take bits and tidbits from what I say and bits and tidbits from what other people say, and incorporate them into what you do so that you could find what is going to work for you, because once again, we are all a bit different and all have different ways of tackling the same problem in life. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss my new and upcoming episodes. I'll be coming every 5 to 7 days. You never know what new knowledge I'll be sharing with you guys, what new studies I'll be going over, or what new guests I'll be having to take your diet and health to the next level. Make sure you click the little bell to get notified as many videos come out. And finally, be sure to check our past episodes. The past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 800 episodes at this time on this channel dedicated to you guys how to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables and other whole plant foods in the best ways possible. I'll also put links down below some of my recent videos on eating some heat processed foods in the healthiest ways possible, because many people may not be aware of the best ways to incorporate some small amounts of heat processed foods so that you can thrive on a raw vegan diet, or even just your standard vegan diet that are not eating enough minimally processed foods, which is exactly what I teach on my channel. So with that, my name is John Kohler with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always the best.